Order. Thanks everyone for coming out. Can you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, just a few details here to announce. We did have 2 executive sessions this month. Oh, here comes Jim. The first was on January 13th, and that was Charlene's first official executive session. And for that, we went over some legal, real estate, and personnel issues. And on January 20th, yesterday, we all met for personnel reasons, and that was actually a very long day of interviewing manager candidates, and it went very well. So we're very excited about that. So we do need to approve the Board of Supervisor minutes from December 16th and January 6th. Could I have a motion for that?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Board of Supervisors minutes December 16th, 2024 and January 6th, 2025.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that's approved. Thank you very much. We do have a presentation tonight, and I just want to mention too that Bernie is on the phone here. He was in yesterday, but it's so cold today, so we're giving him one more break to call in. And we do have a presentation today from Ginny Marcel Kerslake. Did I say that right? Okay, thank you. And she is with Food and Water Watch. And this is a presentation on CO2 pipeline ordinances, local ordinances to protect the health and safety. So I'm going to turn that over to you right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this working? Yeah. I got to say, I'm from West Whiteland Township, and I'm super impressed by your turnout at these meetings. We have way more people living in West Whiteland, but nowhere near this. So good for you guys. So I'm Ginny Marcel Kerslake. I have been a resident of West Whiteland Township for 20 years. The whole time that I've lived in Pennsylvania. Before that, I lived in Canada. My life took sort of a turn in 2017 when the Mariner East pipelines hit us here. And this was a new kind of pipeline for us in Chester County. We're used to having lots of different pipelines. And I know it didn't go through West Vincent, but I'm sure people here are well aware of all the problems that happened during construction. We had hundreds of drilling fluid spills, sinkholes. People lost their well water, some of them permanently because there was no public option. It led to 48 criminal charges from then AG Josh Shapiro for the construction of Mariner East against Energy Transfer. And in the end, it has left us, those of us who live in communities with Mariner East, with no credible emergency plan to protect our communities when these pipelines leak. So all of that got me involved with local and state government, realizing how important it is. I was one of the founders of West Whiteland Residents for Pipeline Safety, Del Chesco United for Pipeline Safety, and eventually it led me to my current role for the past 3 years with Food and Water Watch as an organizer in Pennsylvania. So I'm here tonight because we are now facing another new kind of pipeline threat, and that's carbon dioxide pipelines. But unlike Mariner East, we have the opportunity here to do something to protect our communities, an opportunity we did not have with Mariner East. So a bit of background. You're probably wondering, why are we having CO2 pipelines coming in? Well, the fossil fuel industry is pushing what they call carbon capture and storage. And it's a way for them to greenwash their pollution and cash in on very lucrative government subsidies, our tax dollars. Theoretically, it involves capturing CO2 from power generating facilities and then shipping it through pipelines, most likely, to places where they can inject it underground. In Pennsylvania, they're looking at the Marcellus Shale region where they're doing the fracking to inject it there. So it'd be, if it was a power plant here, it would be pumped westward over to that area. And then it would be pumped underground for long-term storage, theoretically. The problem is this is an unproven, very expensive and energy intensive process. And it actually ends up burning more fossil fuels in that process, which contributes to more greenhouse gas emissions. So it's being touted as a climate solution, but it's actually a false climate solution, and it's being pushed by the fossil fuel industry. What it will mean is a massive build out of CO2 pipelines to transport these from the power plants to sequestration, and especially here in Pennsylvania. So a bit about CO2 and why it's dangerous. At ambient temperature, CO2 is a gas, and it's odorless and it's colorless, but they liquefy it under extremely high pressure for transportation through these pipelines. It's not a flammable gas, but it is, as you probably know, an asphyxiant, and that's to humans and animals. CO2 pipelines themselves are inherently susceptible to what's known as ductile fractures. And this kind of fracture can open up very quickly, kind of like a zipper along a long length of the pipe. And when that happens, immense amounts of CO2 would be released very quickly. It would hurl large sections of pipe, expel shrapnel from the pipe, and create enormous craters. In addition to that, water in the CO2 pipelines, which is notoriously difficult to eliminate from the pipelines, combines with the CO2 to form carbonic acid, which can eat through the steel. So you need a very special kind of steel pipe, which we actually don't have in the ground right now, and they still have to develop. When a leak or rupture occurs, the carbon dioxide is released, it expands back to its gaseous state, and it's heavier than air. So it travels for large distances, roughly 2 miles, possibly more. And it does this at potentially lethal concentrations. If we want to know what this looks like, we actually can look at an incident that happened in Satartia, Mississippi in 2020. They had a 24-inch pipeline there, about a mile from Satartia. And after some heavy rains, the land subsided under the pipeline, and it resulted in a weld fracture. The CO2 spread throughout the rural community, displacing oxygen in the air. Vehicles failed, including emergency vehicles, and people succumbed to CO2 poisoning. Now, luckily, given the timing and the time of week and not a high consequence area, there were no fatalities, but there were 200 people evacuated, and at least 45 people were hospitalized, and some of them are still suffering from the health impacts of CO2 poisoning that can linger for months or years. So I want to talk about the regulations for these pipelines. Right now, there are no state or federal regulations for these CO2 pipelines. The Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which is a federal body, regulatory body for pipelines, it's part of the Department of Transportation. They are currently drafting rules for CO2 pipelines, and that's a direct consequence of what happened in Satartia and this pending build out of these pipelines, and groups like the Pipeline Safety Trust that have been pushing for rules to protect us. They have just released a first draft of their proposed rules after about, it's like 5 to 10 years of working on this. They put out the notice, coincidentally, January 10th, so just a week ago. And then once they are publicized in a national bulletin, the public is given 60 days to comment on those. But that is far from the end of it. The PUC here in Pennsylvania put new regulations in place for natural gas liquids pipelines like Mariner East over concerns for Mariner East. And I can tell you about that process. Where PHMSA is right now on these CO2 regs, The PUC was in August of 2021, and then they finally had them in place and approved in September of last year. So we can't expect PHMSA to get these in place for years down the road. They move even slower than the PUC on regulations. So 3 years would be, that would be very quick for them. Plus we have a new administration. So the thing is, this will go through various drafts and various, numerous public comment periods. If the end product is really great and it has these protections for us, things that we're hoping you might do at the local level, the problem is that in these regulations, they're often written so that they do not apply to existing pipelines. So in the meantime, something could come in and this wouldn't, and this is what we're facing with Mariner East. The PUC has put stronger regs in place, but they don't apply to what we already have with Mariner East. So that's a problem with waiting for these. So because there are no state or federal regulations, this is why I'm here tonight, because you have the unique opportunity to put ordinances in place at the local level to protect people. And you have that power to do so. In 2024, we had the first 2 CO2 pipeline ordinances passed, and they were right here in Chester County. East Goshen Township did it first, and then my township, West Whiteland, followed suit. Both of those ordinances I have with me tonight, and I'll leave a copy, they have 3 things in them. One, which is most importantly, is a setback. So they state that these pipelines cannot go within a half mile of any kind of building or 3/4 miles of a building of public congregation. So like a school or a church, something like that, community center, this building. They also have leak detection requirements and emergency plan requirements. So I will give you those. I'm also going to email the link to it for you and a summary of what I went through tonight, so you can share it however you want and consider it. And it will have links to some of the background on this. I didn't want to spend too much time on that. And yeah, so I can take some questions, and I thank you for considering this. And
Are you aware of any other ordinances anywhere else in the state?
not in the state. No, those were the first 2, the ones in Chester
Pennsylvania
County.
was- Okay.
But there are ordinances and there are being put in place in other states. So East Goshen's ordinance was not drawn up out of the blue. They have a pipeline safety task force, something that was formed in that township because of Mariner East. It has a group of engaged citizens and some people from the township on that board. And they reviewed model ordinances put out by the Pipeline Safety Trust. So I think in Nebraska and Iowa, they're facing it, and it's for different reasons other than fracking. It's through the farming industry, and they're facing CO2 pipelines. So
they're using existing pipelines.
no, they're putting new ones in the ground.
But are they also using existing ones and changing the product that's in them, or no?
They really
Oh.
can't. They often do that. I mean, that's a great question, because they often do that with these pipelines. But because the CO2 is under such high pressure, like roughly 2000 PSI for the transportation, the pipes aren't made to withstand that. And then also this corrosive nature and everything, that it's just too dangerous. Yeah, they'd have to be looking at some sort of specialized lining, which I know some of the pipeline companies are considering, but they have not been approved yet, or putting new pipes in the ground. And they would most likely target existing easements like they did for Mariner East. And I know West Vincent has, I think you've got 4, you've got Enbridge, Energy Transfer, Williams,
Sunoco.
and yeah, Energy Transfer, Sunoco, that's the same company. And TransCanada, I think, too, maybe.
Yep.
Texas Eastern.
Yeah, Texas Eastern, which is also known as Enbridge. So, yeah, and I don't know about TransCanada, but those other 3 have definitely come up in conversations or talking to their shareholders about CO2. So,
And this is not being regulated at all by FERPA or anything like that?
No, FERC doesn't actually regulate pipelines per se. They do in terms of permitting and construction, that kind of stuff. But the actual regs for safety come from PHMSA.
Okay.
So could we be looking at eminent domain on preserved land?
Well, I mean, possibly. There was a bill in Harrisburg last year, a very bad bill, which unfortunately passed, but it declared carbon storage to be in the public interest. So that kind of sets that up, and it actually takes away property rights for the people in Western PA where this would happen. They would not be able to approve it. So that was one of the really bad things about it. I would imagine they would try to do this, but right now they don't really have the grounds for it.
Do you know how they got to the half mile, 3/4 mile?
Yeah, so that's actually based on modeling, and it's also based on real life experience. In Satartia, that cloud, the vapor cloud spread over a mile, I think possibly 2 or maybe even 3 miles. And if you look at the proposed regs from PHMSA, they actually talk about emergency planning and communications has to consider either a modeling that they've done to determine a distance or 2 miles. So the half mile distance, 3/4 miles is conservative and easily defendable.
I'm just wondering if there's a place that it could be placed in
Well,
the township.
yeah.
That is not a
That fits
half
that.
mile or 3/4 mile from anything. I mean.
it's quite possible. It's quite possible it couldn't. And
Inclusive.
yeah, and definitely in East Goshen and West Whiteland, it couldn't. You can't find a half mile or 1.5 mile wide corridor through those townships. But if you can't find that corridor, then it's not safe to put it there. You cannot protect your residents.
Now, Bernie, since you're on the phone there, I don't want to ignore you. Did you have any questions at all?
No, other than, has the state mandated that the townships facilitate these pipelines, or where does it stand legally?
The state hasn't done anything in regards to it, no. And they can't,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
you said the state hasn't done anything?
Right, state is not regulated at all.
No.
Up to this point.
So that gives us an opportunity to regulate it first, or does it,
Yeah.
do they just throw that out at one point?
I think the only the only thing you can't do, and I believe this is in, I'm not sure if it's in the municipal planning code or where it is, and you're probably well aware of it, you just can't say no to a use. But you can put protections in place. And if that means they can't put it there or somewhere where they want to, yeah, then so be it.
I'd like to open it up to anyone who has questions. Anyone have questions for Ginny?
Could you come up and ask your question on the microphone?
So we can catch it
Please.
better. Thank you.
So Bernie can hear you.
Okay, I'm just curious, like, what is the pros that they're trying to push for doing this? Like, I can hear all the negatives, and I'm like totally on board with you, but what is it that why they're saying that like it's in everyone's best interest, and what is it that they're trying to say that it's going to be beneficial?
Well, there's a lot of pressure, as I'm sure everybody's aware, on the fossil fuel industry to stop, to minimize its impact on climate, and for people who appreciate the climate crisis that we're in, they want something done about this. Unfortunately, CO2 capture is not going to solve the problem. Even if it did work, you still have the problem of all of the methane releases from it. So
But how are they trying to say that it's going to solve it?
Because they're just saying, we are going to do this. This is going to solve the problem.
The long-term storage.
And enough people aren't, people aren't
Asking the question as
asking
like,
the question.
exactly how is it supposed to solve it? So
Yeah.
they're not saying that, they're saying, oh, it's supposed to solve
Exactly.
it, so therefore, like, we're gonna go for it.
Yeah, and this is not new. They've been trying to do this for decades now. I think it started before the Obama administration. And every single project has either utterly failed or way underperformed their targets. And in terms of putting it underground in these massive quantities, that's never been done. Like 95% of the carbon they have captured actually goes back into oil extraction because they pump it down into a well that they've already gotten almost everything out of.
To get
And that
more?
CO2 brings more out. Yeah, it's called enhanced oil recovery. So that whole part of the storage, that is vastly new and it's, they don't know where the CO2 is going to end up. And that bad bill I mentioned, another bad part of it, other than taking away personal property rights, after all of the injection is completed, the liability for that stored CO2 is transferred from the operator to the Commonwealth. So we will be on the hook for it if something happens.
Okay, that was.
So there's really
question.
nothing the industry wants to do to greenwash, but also there's tons of subsidies given
Okay.
for it.
Any other questions? Well, we really appreciate you coming out and sharing this information with us
Thank you, Jenny.
today.
Really appreciate it.
Here and
Okay.
the West Whiteland ordinance and the East Goshen ordinance. And I'll follow up with links and
Great.
synopsis
Thank
and.
you.
Yeah.
On the same topic, I'd just like to add that EPA research
Thank
shows
you.
that 1 acre of forested land will sequester 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So we here are sequestering a lot of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere in West Vincent Township.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on
Thank you, Jenny.
to, a couple of thank yous real quick. I just wanted to throw it out there that we so appreciate Mike Hoga and the rest of the Public Works crew for all the work that they do in the snow. And I know our police get drug out doing some things too, and we really appreciate everything they do to keep us safe here. And also a shout out to Beth and Tosha and the litter lifters for spending their Saturday doing an MLK cleanup on Route 401 and 100, 2 places I don't like to walk around on, but they were out there collecting 50 bags of trash, and we appreciate that. So, so thank you for all that work that you folks did. We did want to mention that the Butterscotch Cafe, the conditional use continuation is planned, and it's going to be Monday, February 24th at 7 o'clock, our regular time. We have a reminder about our Trail Implementation Committee, which is a new committee, which is just being formed, and we're, Ed Latchall is going to come out and explain a lot about our.
Ed Furcroft.
Oh, did I say that? I'm sorry, Ed Thurcroft, excuse me. That's the other Ed. We do miss him though. Yes, Ed Thurcroft is going to be here explaining the trail plan, which he actually laid out 2 years ago for us, or 3 years ago for us, and ways that we can implement continuing that and improving it. So we would like to invite anyone who wants to come out to that, learn about it, and see if you're interested in being a part of it. And that is on the 27th. Now, at one point, it was listed as the 24th, so just be careful. It is Monday, the 27th. So
The website still says the 24th.
great. Okay, we'll get that fixed. A reminder that we have positions open for several committees still. We have Planning Commission, Parks and Rec, Zoning Hearing Board, Historical Commission, and of course, the Trail Implementation Committee is completely open. Sustainability. And also Human Relations is not here, but we're going to be talking about that on March 3rd, about where we're going with that and getting that moving forward in a good direction. So, but there are still openings on that committee as well. And I know it looks like a lot of openings. It's not that people aren't interested. It's that we really haven't had a quorum of of anyone to help pull in volunteers and agree upon them. So we didn't push too hard at that time, and we're going to try and fill those vacancies now. So there's only a few in each one, and we want to make sure we get the right people in, and all of us are on board with it. So one more thing I want to mention is about the historic resources. which is the non-governmental group that gets together with Isabella Travellini. I'm sure if anyone's ever seen her speak, she's a wonderful historian, and she's going to be doing monthly meetings on different little stories about West Vincent history. And this month is going to be the Underground Railroad on February 11th. They normally meet on the first Tuesdays, but definitely worth keeping an eye on what she's going to be speaking on. We want to tell everyone to stay off the pond. You would think you wouldn't need to say that, but even though it looks cold and frozen, it is not. So please be very careful with that. And we did just get an update on two other things that everyone keeps asking us about. One is the Fellowship Trail, which we just awarded the bid on that. And it looks like we're probably going to be somewhere in the range of June 30th for completion. It's probably going to need a little extension from that, but that was the original goal. But that has been awarded and is moving forward. And last but not least, Opalani Park, which we put a lot of effort into, and we've been waiting patiently, and that is going out to bid this Thursday on the 23rd through the 27th. It's going to go on to Penn Bid and into the Mercury, and we hope to be able to have that awarded by February 26th and have a decision on February 26th and awarded at our next meeting, hopefully on the 3rd. So that's pretty much it for announcements. There's a lot of announcements. I'm sorry. And I want to turn it over to Chief Mike Swiniger for a police report. Thank you for waiting. We're going to try and move you up in the roster.
No problem.
Thank you, Chief.
During the month of December, the police department had 161 calls for service, investigated 6 crimes, had 1 arrest, 8 traffic stops, and 3 accident investigations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have another visitor today that's not on here for reports, and hopefully this is going to be a regular. I want to introduce Jeff Kime from Ludwig's.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Lowest Corner Fire Company report for December of 2024. For West Vincent Township for the month, we had 3 automatic alarms, 1 trees and wires, 1 CO alarm. We had 1 cardiac arrest, 1 chimney fire, 1 electrical fire inside a dwelling, and 1 appliance fire. Our QRS unit, which is our medical unit, responded to 30 calls, medical in nature. Our total calls for the month of December were 32. Our total time in service was 16 hours and 12 minutes. And our total man hours for the month was 55 hours and 57 minutes. For December, we had an average of 7 volunteers for fire calls and an average of 2 volunteers for medical incidents. Our end of the year report for West Vincent Township, we had 18 auto accidents, 1 building fire, 40 automatic alarms, 12 trees and wires, 12 CO alarms, 3 woods fires, 2 fire police requests, 1 trash fire, and we had 230 calls requests for medical calls in nature. Our total incidents for West Vincent for the month, or for the year, was 336 calls. Our time in service was 148 hours and 26 minutes. And our total man hours for the year were 695 hours and 13 minutes. We had an average responder of 8 volunteers per call for the entire year for fire incidents. And for QRS, we had an average responder of 2. And we also attended over 1,500 hours of training for the year.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And we
Thank
remind
you.
everyone that that's our volunteers too.
And
so
we appreciate the
it.
support from our
Thank
community.
you.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Jim, would you like to get into the treasurer's report?
Okay, first I'd like to go over the summary of the funds. This is as of the end of the year, so as of 12/31/2024. General fund, $1,362,045.90. Capital project reserve, $2,552,511.07. Capital equipment fund, $266,021.04. Capital road fund, $1,783,021.95. The Citadel account, $31,151.74. The DC pension, $51,405.34. Payroll account, $41,201.10. for a total of unrestricted funds of $6,087,358.14. In terms of restricted township funds, the ARPA funds were $72,947.81. Open space, $4,806,361.46. Liquid fuels fund, $396,500.96. Total of restricted funds, $5,275,810.23. Non-township funds. Escrow funds of $908,885.84. The sewer fund of $28,499.05. Total of non-township funds but in township accounts, $937,384.89. Grand total, $12,300,553.26. One thing that I've been asked by the board to address is there was something that was discovered in the last couple of months. And this came about because we received a communication from Calhoun and Calhoun, who is a contractor for the Delaware Valley Regional Finance Authority. And the township in 2022 refinanced its debt and also incurred new debt. What we discovered was that there are three bond issues for the township. One is a $500,000 borrowing for equipment. One is a $3.1 million borrowing, which is the remainder left of the open space fund borrowing. And then there's a $1.1 million bond issue, which is for general fund purposes. What we discovered was that the general fund was paying both the open space and the general fund bond issue, and open space was paying the equipment fund. So what we did is that's now been reversed. So new ACHs have been sent to the bank so that the open space fund will pay the open space borrowing, and the general fund will pay the equipment fund and the general fund borrowing. What we felt we needed to do, though, is because the general fund had been paying more than its share of the borrowings for the past year, is that we did move approximately $237,000 from open space into the general fund. That is really money that belongs in the general fund because the general fund was paying an inordinate share of the open space bond issue. So that was discovered and the money has been transferred.
We can only go back so far to rectify that, given the audits that have been done.
That's correct. I mean, I
It's not a
don't,
terrible thing to fund the open space, but it wasn't intended.
so that has been done. And the result of that is that one of the things you see is that and this was done at the very end of November, but it's only reflected in the December statement. So the general fund, you'll see that it's over $1 million. And one of the main reasons for that is because of the transfer from open space.
And we appreciate you finding that. So thank you very much for explaining that. Do we have any questions? Mona, it's nice to see you back. I did miss you. Is that too hard for you?
Okay, one of the things I've always said is I think aside from this balance of funds, the activity is more important. And what it shows here is that for the year, the township has a plus balance of $1.4 million. It has the general fund balance, income, not a balance. The income or the general fund has an income of $900,000. And these numbers would be crucially important if you just set tax rates. And one thing we can say is that taxpayers paid for $1 million of services they never got. The money went in the bank. We just kept paying and we didn't get anything for it.
And John, if I can address that quickly, one of the reasons I mean, I've always felt, and I've worked for a number of different townships, that the townships need to maintain a certain amount of reserves because of unexpected either decreases in income or unexpected expenses. One of the things that's going to happen in the next year is that we're going to build a bridge. It's a $3 million bridge. We fund that and then turn around and we have the ability, because of a grant, to seek reimbursement of $2.6 million from PennDOT. But we have to fund it. So we have to have certain amount of money, both in capital reserve and the road fund and in the general fund in order to do that.
And the trail project too.
Yeah, and then there's other projects too, which are
Lonnie.
which are being planned, which the board is willing to do. So I mean, a lot of what you see in terms of increase in funds are timing related. One of the other increases in funds was, one of the big increases was liquid fuels. And that's because we didn't use liquid fuels this year, but we plan to use a lot of liquid fuels next year, or actually this year. I'm talking about in 2024, we did not use liquid fuel funds.
Can you use that on the bridge?
No, can't.
Well, overall, there's $12 million sitting around in our checking account.
But some of that, it's not ours.
Yes.
And some of that is restricted. So like the open space money can only be used on open space. That's about 4.8 million. And liquid fuel funds that are very restricted in terms of what they can be used for. So if you want to look at the unrestricted funds, yes, there are $6 million in unrestricted funds. We also have $1 million, close to $1 million in escrow and sewage funds, which are not ours. Can't use those for any purpose at all. They're not our money.
Get rid of that.
When's the sewer fund going to go away? At $28,000.
We've attempted to contact the entity we sold the sewage plants to resolve that, and they don't see fit to respond to us. So
We're keeping it safe.
yeah, I mean, it's earning interest.
Last year, stop
Right.
Taking
contacting.
interest, keeping it safe.
Jackie used to contact them every month and say, take our money.
Right.
And we said, don't do that anymore. Maybe it's our money. Maybe they've.
I don't think it's our money.
I don't think, I've had discussions with people about where that money comes from. And there are issues with respect to when we build for certain sewage services and when they started billing. I believe that's money, and other people do, that should go to them because it relates to a time after they started to provide service. So it's their money, but they don't.
Limitations of 2 years, 3 years on that. We owe them that money. It's gonna, I would think it'd be
Can you look into that?
I mean, there's certain things we can do. We can always pay the money into the state.
Wouldn't mind getting it. I'm sure it'll
We
resolve.
can send them a check.
Or we can send them a check, which
Send them
they
a
may or
check
may
and
not
see what
I
get.
think we actually did that.
We tried it
Something
again.
that got sent back.
And we'll get their.
The last time we sent them this 125,000, it was 6 months. We had to reissue the check. You had to approve
It
it
came
again.
back.
It was months and months. I think they didn't know what to do with it.
Very interesting.
It just
Thank you.
seems we shouldn't force them to take the money. I don't think they.
Wouldn't be a problem for me, but thank you.
I have one other thing with Jim, the distribution of the money between the open space and the general fund. It used to be there was one bond for the building, this facility, and then the one for the operating and the open space got combined. And so I didn't gather from your conversation that still was being acknowledged.
It's
That
not.
there's only one bond that we're both paying.
Well, there's three parts to the bond issuance. One is the equipment fund, one relates to general fund matters, and the other relates to open space.
Well, there's no distinct bond for open space. That's combined with the,
I understand that, but they, on the books, they're kept separate. And the reason they're kept separate is because open space should pay for its share of the bond issue.
I agree with that.
And they weren't doing that. So now they are.
Okay. Um,
And that's coming to a close too. I mean, there's not that much longer on the open space bond.
Well, there is longer on that. The one that is actually coming to a close pretty quickly is the equipment fund.
Okay.
That should be, I think the final principal payment is this year. I think it's this year.
I knew one of them was, thank you.
And that's roughly $100,000.
Okay. Interestingly, I always send an email to the board and people, and this month, I got some responses. So some of my patter here is OBE. One of the things I said, where the AARP funds were transferred to the general fund, it doesn't seem like the accounting was correct.
I don't know anything about that. I'll take a look at it. I can't speak to that.
Okay.
And we're.
I know I've not done that,
That's,
but I don't have an answer for you, so I can't speak to that, but I'll look into it for
and
you.
that should be used up already as of the end of the year,
That's correct.
or at least,
It's
Earmarked.
spoken
Yeah.
for, yes.
That's all.
thank you, John.
Evening. George Solcinos, Hollow Road. Is it possible what John was talking about was the transfer for the bonuses? So you could put them
No.
through payroll? Oh, okay.
No, has nothing to do with that.
Okay. Actually, the reason I came up is just tell you the report is improved, the layout. So
We tried.
yeah, it's definitely better, more readable, and the information answers a lot of questions. The only thing I ask for is if we could make it searchable when you print something to PDF. I don't know if there's an option to, make it so that we can find things on the page.
Again, that's something we can look at. I was just trying to get to a point where.
Yeah, it's good, it's much better,
It's improved.
but the treasurer's report for the year would be really nice to be able to search.
I admit, it's very long.
Yeah.
I like if we could keep the headers.
Yeah, and if we,
I hate that, but
yeah, and there's even more room in the margins if we ran out of space, but I didn't see very much truncated. It was much better. Thank you.
thanks, George. Jamie.
Me, Mick Vicker, Black Horse Road. Three things. One is just a general comment about government. People complain a lot about government, maybe more now than ever. But when I was a kid, our roads got plowed after 3 or 4 days. I remember one week in particular, it snowed on Monday. Friday, the snowplows came on Black Horse Road. As a kid, we loved it because snow and because we were out of school. But people complain now if a plow doesn't come through the same day as the snow. So I appreciate what the township has done in that regard. Second is, you sort of just answered this. The ARPA funds had to be used by the end of the year. You say it's spoken for. We're not in trouble with the not having spent it.
That's correct. And it has to be either spent or earmarked.
Okay.
We've got police vehicles and other things that were already ordered, which we need to pay for.
Okay.
So it's not a problem.
And
Great.
when does the reporting need to be done on that? Just to-
I believe it has to be done by March 31st. But that's one of the things I'm going over all the reports that need to be done in January, February, and March, and just making sure that we meet all those deadlines.
Third thing is, thanks for finding that issue with the open space funds and the general funds. John's too nice to say it. He's been saying that for years now, pointing out that those general funds are being commingled with the open space funds. It wasn't accounted for properly. John always has a lot of issues. And for me, as being one of his co-elected auditors, I honestly don't understand many of the accounting principles that he refers to. He's a CPA, I'm not. But something like this, I wish had been taken more seriously in the past. And I hope that John will be paid close attention to, and not saying that he isn't, just he raises good points. So
I will say that the issues he was raising were more about the EIT, which we did an exhaustive search of.
Well, that was,
This is a related but a little bit different issue, and
well, he did EIT too. I mean, he always has a list. EIT was one of them, but
not the issue though, but
almost every month he would mention open space and the general funds being commingled. So
Thank you.
John. Thank you, Jim.
Welcome.
I think we want to move on to
Bill's list.
the bills list. I have a question before you do that. Do you have an answer to that?
Oh,
It'd be nice to have that answer.
no.
No.
Sorry.
Does anybody?
No.
How do we make a motion for that?
Just make a motion to approve the bills list.
Okay. Okay, great. Please.
We'll have to have it.
Okay, all right, that's
Just
good.
convenience to have it totaled.
Okay, great.
Right.
Would you mind making a report on the bills list?
I mean, there were a lot of bills. I have the checks here. There's also, as we see later in the agenda, there's escrow releases.
I have a motion to approve the bills list, which we don't have the total
I don't have
on.
the total.
That's we're correct.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the expenditures list for all township funds.
Second motion.
Any questions on that?
Second, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And manager's report.
There's a couple things I'd like to report on. One is I've got a request from the roadmaster that people not push snow into the roads. It's a problem because a lot of that's being done after the roads are plowed and then it doesn't, and it becomes a problem. So we have to come back again and again and again because the roads get a lot of snow in them. So please, and I know a lot of it's done by contractors, but at least talk to your contractors to make sure that they don't push snow back into the roads. I know a lot of contractors just put the blade down and push it across the street. That's also a problem in those subdivisions that have rolled curbs because we see a lot of damage to the rolled curbs because they get hit head on by the plows and they knock the whole back off the rolled curbs. So it's something you need to have your contractors, or if you do it yourself, you need to be careful about. The other thing, and in terms of the pond, it's not just this pond. We have a number of different ponds on both township property and there's other ones in the park. In the township, we've seen adult footprints on the pond after the last thaw. And we were concerned because this pond is unusual because this is fed primarily by groundwater. And there are areas where the ice is quite thin. Now, today it's probably quite thick because of the temperatures, but we're going to have another thaw this weekend. So we're just telling people, please be careful. We don't need the fire department or police going out on rescues to try and rescue someone. It is dangerous to go on the ice at this time of year. Speaking of ice, this is to remind people that Birch Run Road is a state road. It has not, as of this morning, there was full of snow and unfortunately ice. Our roadmaster was working with PennDOT to try and get that taken care of, but we think they needed to get a grader out there to remove some of the ice because it was so thick. So there are some roads that are not township roads that you would think would be township roads. Birch Run Road is a state road and PennDOT had not touched it as of this morning. So just to let people, so be careful. The other thing I wanted to note was the Sheeter Hall Bridge, which is the wooden bridge over French Creek. It's going to be 175 years old this year. And certain folks are planning a birthday party for it on May 18th between 2 and 3 p.m. That's a Sunday. So they're in the process of contacting the townships and the county and residents to let people know that they want to celebrate its 175th birthday.
Apparently it's I think the oldest bird trust bridge, something like, is that, I got that right? Okay, in Chester County, so must be a big deal.
That's all I have.
Okay, great, thank you. So we're back to the employee handbook, which I want to thank Dave for working with all of our employees and going back and forth through, I mean, we're never gonna make everybody happy forever. And I think that's always gonna be a living document and things will change, but we did get it to a point where I think we're ready to approve it, which is great because we'd like to bring some new people on board. So can I make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2025 employee handbook.
I'll second the motion.
Do we have any questions or comments? Well, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Next, we wanted to advertise the ordinance for no parking and stop signs. And, you know, there's two parts to this. Dave, maybe you can explain a little bit more about what's going on with
Sure.
this?
Well, we were asked to put the ordinance together with regard to installing stop signs on
Eagle Farms.
Eagle Farm.
Eagle Farms Road in two places and Augusta Drive. The Eagle Farms Road as it intersects with Bergamot Way and Augusta Drive, and Bergamot Way and Eagle Farms Road. So there's multiple stop signs at those intersections.
And then that also includes the no parking sign.
Right,
as
I'm
well.
sorry. Yeah, then separate from that, we were asked to put as part of the ordinance, no parking on Hollow Road, both sides of the street between Flowing Springs Road and Schoolhouse Road.
And
that area.
am I correct that if you, that we need to put this in the ordinance, otherwise they're non-enforceable? So you can't, you know, you can put your temporary signs up, but we can't write you a
Right.
ticket or.
The police now can enforce it and citation would be enforceable.
Great. Okay.
I'd like to,
There, hello, there's a section of, I guess it would be the southern side of Hollow Road from Schoolhouse down to Flowing Springs. There are, perpendicular spots which belong to the landowner. And I don't know if we can, stop them from parking on their own property.
Well, this would be within the township's right of way.
Okay?
Prevent no parking. So if there is perpendicular parking that would be parking on the property owner, then this would not affect that. This would be only
Okay.
parallel parking in the township's right of way.
Okay.
And I'm also supposing that we're not going to have the number of signs as we had for the temporary signs that were pretty much everywhere, right, Jim? I don't think it said how many and where, but.
Right, it needs to be
Yeah,
signed.
yeah,
Public
right,
Works
yeah.
needs to sign it now once
Right.
this is approved.
Okay,
very good.
So,
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we advertise ordinance number 211, no parking and stop signs.
I'll second the motion.
anyone have a question, George?
So how many signs are there gonna be
where, which one?
on Hollow Road?
He lives right.
I mean, there's 30 signs right now
No, it's
in
not
a
gonna be-
300-foot area.
It's up to Public Works to do it, figure out how many signs they would need along that area. I don't even know. I'm not familiar with the stretch. I've been by it
Okay.
a couple of times of how many
Okay.
stretches.
Well, there's some
It should
existing,
be
20 yards,
reasonable. I
20
think they
yards.
were just trying to make a.
can they
huge
use the
visibility for
existing
that event.
posts? I mean, there's,
Look,
you don't know.
Public Works will figure it out, right?
Okay, well, do they talk to the landowners that are affected? Possibly?
We can get you a heads up.
You need them too? Do you live there? You live
Yeah, I live there. There's 30 signs in front of my house.
Yeah, it's a little insane right now. That's why I made that comment.
And it's ugly.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think anyone wants that. I don't think that's necessary, but because they couldn't be enforced, I guess it went a little overboard.
Be better.
And the perfect thing is if we could take those down and put real signs up and everything would be great. So,
All right, thank you.
anyone else have a question?
Donna Delaney, Beaver Hill Road. Just to follow up on what Bernie said. So there is a landowner there that parks perpendicular to the road, off the road, but I believe that would still be in the townships right away. And that's their parking space. The township right away goes so far from the middle of the road. So I just will hope it's not going to prevent them from parking there
We'll have to see.
at their house.
I don't think that was the intent.
It's not the intent. I don't know how far in they park.
It's an old building and it's close to the road and they just have like a car's width to park parallel to the road. And it's definitely within the townships right away, but so is their building because it's old.
I don't think the right of way is that big.
Well, Newey kind of parks right at the garage, that's right on the road.
Yeah, but that's
33, yeah.
Springs Road. It's not gonna be no parking between-
Right.
It's Hollow Road between Flowing Springs and Schoolhouse Lane. Right, we're just talking about Hollow Road.
Just on Hollow Road.
Between Schoolhouse and.
Norm,
Flowing
did
Springs.
you want to say that, what
Not-
you're saying about the regulation of the parking there?
No.
Oh,
I'm
you-
not familiar with
Okay,
that.
okay, I thought you
was
had a
talking-
comment.
Yeah, so it's likely it's a 33-foot right of way, which is, so it'd be 16 and a half feet from the center line on each side. So
Well,
it's
and
not,
I don't think there's
can't
any,
imagine there's any structures that are within the right.
I don't think there's anything specific in this ordinance to exactly where it's placing and, so we can certainly work those details
Sure.
out. Make sure.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Oh, good. Now we feel better. Thank you. Anyone else have a question or comment on that? All right. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item is a new item. We're talking about advertising to discuss. Actually, that was an advertisement as well, right?
Right.
Yeah, so this is we're calling it the no-knock ordinance. It's really a solicitation ordinance.
Well, you currently have a
Explain
no peddling and solicitation ordinance in your book of ordinances. What this does is adds a little bit more structure to the enforceability of your ordinance. And it provides for the no-knock registry, which is a way to be able to regulate, require permits for anyone wishing to peddle, and a way to regulate that and for the property owners or residents to actually get on a list if they wish of no-knock homes. And peddlers, when they get their permit, will be given this list that says you are not to knock on these homes. People have registered. They don't want peddling solicitation at their homes. Your ordinance doesn't go that far now. So this takes your ordinance further than where you are. And
Dave,
go ahead.
does this include solicitation for political offices?
No, they're exempted.
Okay.
By constitutional pieces,
Religion.
religious and political speech are protected. So we cannot,
Okay.
we cannot regulate that.
Okay,
But
that's fine.
we can regulate commercial speech, and this is
Yeah.
commercial speech.
And if we do pass this, I believe the intent is that we would have a mechanism on our website where people could go, add their name to the list, and then, the chief of police would have that list as well as our zoning officer to give that out to the folks who do get a permit.
Right.
So that's the mechanism that would be in place.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's a
I'd
lot
like,
of ways township could do it.
Mhm.
That's certainly one way.
I'd like to make a motion to advertise ordinance number 212, no knock.
I'll second the motion.
Anyone have a question on this? You can sit right up here.
Regarding exemptions for political purposes, it says that they have to make an application to the supervisors.
Well,
This is
if there's a
section,
question as to whether or not an exemption will apply, then you would. So if you're,
so if people are campaigning, they have to
No.
Okay.
If there's someone that's doing something and saying, hey, I'm campaigning, when really they're trying to sell something.
Okay. Just reading this, it says an application will be made to the supervisors to get an exemption or something to that effect.
It looks like you can still have flower stands, but I was worried about lemonade stands.
Yeah, it's not
Is there
intended that
okay?
it's not intended that those running for political office
Need to
have
apply.
permission to do that.
Okay.
It's where someone's claiming an exemption.
Okay. I'm just reading the text.
Questionable whether they should have it, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, we're releasing some escrows for Honeybrook Properties, Mirably, Fenton, and Morgera.
I make a motion that we release the escrows for the above properties.
A second.
Any questions on that? No? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And next up, we have the 2025 West Vincent Township Emergency Operations Plan, which has to be updated every 2 years. And looking at that, it looked like we still needed to update for the 2020 census. It still had the 2010 census on there, which has us at 6,600 residents and 14 miles of gravel road. So that's going to need to be changed, but otherwise, we can still approve it. And it's always a constant changing document anyway. So
I'd like to make a motion to accept the 2025 West Vincent Township Emergency Operations Plan pending the 2020 census information.
I'll second.
Any questions? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And next we have a letter. It's a response letter to Euclid Ambulance Corp. For those who were here and did see that Euclid Ambulance had given us notice. So we also were looking to give them a small payment of what was left from our ARPA funds as just a good faith gesture and hoping to get conversations going with them again. But this is a letter to their board to make sure that they're aware of what's transpired and make sure that we can get some talks going.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the response letter to Euclid Ambulance along with $10,000 payment.
I'll second.
Any questions?
Hi, Julia Brandel. Question, did we send the letter yet?
No. we're
Oh,
sitting on
okay.
it.
Okay, because it's dated the end of December.
Well, it's been sitting around since that long.
Okay.
This is the first meeting.
Yeah, we also had to write the check for ARPA by the end of the year, and we did write it.
Yes.
So I guess if we don't send it, what do we do with it?
Pardon?
We can't use
We
it for
spent it on
anything else
something
now,
else.
right?
So I read the letter. It's informative. Kind of understand what's going on, but do we have a sense from them what it costs to serve West Vincent in terms of reimbursement? And, if they're serving West Vincent and nobody has insurance and they're not reimbursed, that's one level of cost. My suspicion is that that's not the case here. And it seems if we're just writing them a check without getting something back from them to sort of make the case why, what they think we owe them or why we should give them a certain amount of
Some
money.
research on that. I don't know, do you want to?
Well, they should have this, I would think.
Well, they supplied us with some information. We've also done some research on our own, looking at other townships that are served by Euclid Ambulance and what their contributions are on a per capita basis, on a per call basis, and as a percentage of their general fund basis. And based upon those three items, we believe that the likely contribution that they would be seeking from the township would be in the range of between $40,000 and $45,000, which
Well,
is,
we're closer to 25 when we came down. to
well,
it.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm averaging things, but certain
Okay.
ones are higher than the other, but you're talking something which is vastly different than what they came in and asked.
Yeah, I
for,
understand
which was
that.
$107,000.
I think another data point in this should be, if it can be measured, what kind of donations they get from township residents.
And that we
that
know.
too.
Okay,
That there are over $30,000 in donations
Okay.
that they get from, and not just donations, but they have the program where you
subscribe,
subscribe.
right.
So you're talking donations and subscriptions of it's over $30,000.
Yeah, so
Just the township
And weren't
resident.
a lot of their, when we looked at the service, wasn't most of it planned transfers, which they're actually getting
Correct.
paid for too, so.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, so that, I mean, that's
Do
the
we feel
thing.
we owe them this, though? No, we're just feeling like we have it, we can do it, we gave them nothing this past year, and it's a.
I don't, I have no idea what, again, it's the numbers that we just talked about is how you figure out if what we should give them. I hate to just throw them money just because we have it and didn't do an analysis. So it sounds like we've done some analysis and it's gonna go into next year's budget. Because that would be the,
Next year's budget currently says $5,000, so that needs to
Correct.
be.
So, but I mean, the
It's
answer
not
is
been
the
amended.
board hopes for a discussion with their board
yeah,
to set reasonable numbers and, the board has to figure out how, if there was increases, how to fund it.
yeah, okay, all right. I mean, it was kind of odd the way the whole thing went down. So,
It was.
We agree.
all right, thank you.
I want to just add something to this whole thing. So I think that the ongoing operating expense isn't really their issue. I think what their issue is that they haven't budgeted well over the last handful of years, and they have 4 ambulances that are all old and need to be replaced. I think that's why they came up with this big number, is because they don't have money to replace their equipment. And apparently it's all really old and does need to happen. I'm not saying you should give them the money, but I think that that's really why they came up with the number that they came up with. It's not annual operating expenses. It's their capital. It's what they need to get new ambulances so they can continue to service everyone. Right.
Right, and
Well, of course. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's not really our problem that they didn't pay attention to the fact that this was happening and that they were running out of money and that they don't have the money to replace them. And all of a sudden now they're like, wow, we need to do them all at the same time.
well, they didn't come out to ask for it until we were all
Right.
through our budget process.
Oh,
and
right.
we no longer had a quorum for the rest of the
Right.
year.
No, I mean, I read the letter that you wrote to them. Yeah, that's understandable. what I'm trying to say is for George, this is why they came up with that really big number, is because they got themselves in a pickle and they need to figure out how to get out of it. That's why they asked us for so much money.
And to the credit of Ludwig's, we worked with them over the years to now we're working on our second fire truck, right? Because
Oh, he's still here. I didn't know he was
had-
still here.
Yeah, I know you're still here. Oh, you leave. But you've always communicated with us. We worked with you and I think that all of us value and appreciate our first responders and want to do all we can. But we appreciate the communication. Thank you. So I think we have a motion on the table. Anyone else out here? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And lastly, we have the fee schedule, which we talked about at our last meeting, was changed to include some changes on the fireworks permit, which do you have that in front of you, Jim, to explain the change to that?
I don't, Christina,
I think it was more about a definition and we did make the tent change that we talked about too. To be in there.
Fireworks permit for essentially for fireworks show versus
Yeah.
fireworks.
I think we made a definition of
Right.
fireworks.
For fireworks permit, in parentheses, for any fireworks needing a license to purchase are fireworks regulated by the state. This does not include readily available, quote, safe and sound fireworks.
Safe and sound is actually the brand.
Yeah, that's a brand. Okay.
So, I mean, we're trying to make this more specific in terms of what would need a license. So we're talking about fireworks that are regulated by the state, which are the larger type of fireworks.
Fireworks show.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the update to the 2025 fee schedule for changes to fireworks permit.
Second motion?
Questions?
Sorry. Yes, two questions. So one of them is on the tent permit. So the way I'm reading it now, it's $200 for the inspection. And then if we have 5 to 10 tents, it's an additional 400. So that's 600 total.
I thought the first four were a certain amount.
So we're the first 4, $200, and then 5 through 10 are $400. So that means if we have 5 tents, it's $600.
No.
No, I think it's
Five,
600.
Well, 2 plus the $200.
up to 10 tents for $600.
That's what I thought. Okay, so it's $200 for the inspection, then, okay,
And you get 4 tents.
right. Got it. No, so we're not compounding it. It was more money last year.
Last year, 200 inspection, plus 200 for tents 1 to 4, or 400 for if you had more than 4 to 9. That's what it was last.
Right, yeah. Well, that's what, yeah, so it's the same. So it's gonna be, so if we have 8 tents, it's gonna be $600. And this is not including the stakes and the stakes and the ropes. So a 20 by 20 is under 400 square feet. And everybody understands that? Including our inspector?
Definition.
It's up to, so it's anything over, and that would not be over. We're not.
Right.
including ropes in
And the way that the state reads is that there are certain exemptions. So you can go up to 700 square feet if you don't have sides and if you don't have, and if you have a sufficient separation between the tents.
Ooh. Okay,
We're gonna do that.
Yes.
We're working on that. George was helping us make that clear, so
cool.
run it by you again before it's finalized.
Also, really quickly, for the UNO or the certificate of occupancy, it still has for change of owner / tenant in there.
The actual permit it does, we've got a lot of things changing.
Okay.
It does not include.
Because I happen to have a new listing coming up in the township in the next couple of weeks, and I just want to make sure we don't have to do a use and occupancy permit. Would anyone like information on the new listing?
All right, no more
Okay.
advertisements. Thank you.
Commercial, it will still need a UNO.
All right, thank you very much. I think we have a motion on the table.
Right.
Okay, anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now, if we have any general public comments, Barry?
Just real quick, there hasn't been any roadmaster reports for like a decade. Any intent of ever bringing them back?
Good idea.
Thanks.
Anyone else have any questions or
Looks
comments?
like you got a few here.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Hi.
Farrell and Megan Kuroda, 15 St. Andrews Lane. We wanted to circle back with the last meeting. There was some discussion on how to help us out with our dusty dirt road. Some neighbors came with us as well. We had asked for some additional support. The dust on our road is really unbearable. So we were curious what your plans are to help the situation.
Spoken with the roadmaster. He's working on both the plans ultimately to pave the road, but we also discussed some of the items that you brought up in terms of potentially using tar and chip in certain areas or using some sort of dust suppression, and he's investigating those. Obviously, those are things which can't be done at this time of the year.
I understand that.
But he's taking a look at things, and he's going to get back to us to indicate what he thinks he can accomplish, both short-term and long-term.
Just want to make sure that we do not go through another summer like we just had.
Understood.
It's literally unbearable.
Understood.
It's hard to imagine unless you're gonna.
We used to oil that road.
Okay.
So is that not being done any longer?
And it's not being done anymore, and the state has stopped doing it on state roads, and it is difficult to get the materials and to get someone to apply them. We used to use food grade soybean oil because of concerns about ingestion and it getting into people's wells and water supplies, since we're all, I mean, the dirt and gravel roads, pretty much everybody who lives on one of them has a well. So there is concern about everybody's water supply. So, and it's fallen out of favor. Some places also use brine. That is also fallen out of favor too, because it's going to go somewhere. So it's going to go into the streams, it's going to go into ponds, and potentially goes into people's water supply. So we're looking at other options, including doing things like limiting tar and chip, which would, take care of it for short stretches. But the ultimate fix would be the paving of St. Andrews, which is, has to be engineered, and it's going to be
There's a lot of work ahead of
a
that.
lot of work ahead, and it's going to be expensive.
So can we source the oil? Is that not possible?
I'd have to ask Mike. I don't know because I haven't been doing this for a while. I will tell you that when we used to do it, when I was the manager, it got increasingly difficult to get.
Okay.
People don't have I think
That
there
was
was
a long
only
time ago.
one source in Lancaster County who had the ability to apply it.
Okay.
I mean, food grade soybean oil is not that hard to get, but
Who's going to do it? Right.
to apply it appropriately to roads, and one of the issues that we ran into was to make it work, you really had to put a lot down. So what we started doing was putting it down and then put tailings on top of it to absorb it,
Right.
which is another issue. The other issue is it would become really hard. And where it would break up, you would get these really sharp edged potholes,
Okay.
which created other problems. So it's something which really has fallen out of favor, and it's not being done. I'm not aware of anyone who's doing it anymore.
Okay. I remember it being done on that road, and it did settle the dust temporarily.
I think our biggest concern is we've owned the property for 7 years, and we've been told since then that we're going to behave. So now it's kind of like how many months go by that we kind of just would like a firm timeline almost as to, something that's going to be done, I think.
Guess when we get the roads report, we could probably fit that in. That's a good idea.
Okay, thank
Try
you.
and put
You're
that
welcome.
together. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do appreciate what you're going for. Thank you. Anyone else have comments?
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on. Bernie's ready.
My question is what Farrell. My name is Jahan Sheikh, and we live right across Farrell. And this is the issue that we bought our property over 10 years ago. And I was shown a plan, is actually engineering plan that was supposed to be, the road supposed to be asphalt. But it never got done. And the question is that why is this section of road never been considered for pavement? What's the reason?
I'm sorry, which road?
What's the reason?
What road? I couldn't
This-
catch that you said.
This is St. Andrews Road.
Oh, okay, so also.
Same road that Farrell's talking about. We are right across from Farrell's. But the reason for this road not being paved is what?
timing.
It's money, I'm sure, but.
Yeah, money's a big part of it. I mean,
All
if we're
right.
talking,
What's requirement for this road to get paved?
what's required? Well, if you're gonna pave it, it needs to be brought up to state standards. So we're gonna have to increase the right of way. We're gonna have to do a lot of work on stormwater, which is an issue on St. Andrews. We know that. And then you've got to have a proper base for the asphalt. So there's a lot of things that
Sure.
need to be done, and just obtaining the right of way is going to take some period of time.
So for that reason, we never see asphalt in that road again. Is that what you say?
No, I said, no, it is a process. It is a slow process, but the township is moving forward to look to pave that road. Township has not, the township has been hesitant in the past to pave gravel roads because the gravel roads are part of the nature of the township, and there are a lot of people who really like their gravel roads and do not want them paved. So doing this is something different than historically what the township has done. But township does understand the issue, and I mean, I can remember, and this is years ago, I was in a meeting with all the residents of Black Horse Road. And Black Horse Road, not the one on the other side of 100, but this side of 100. And that's a gravel road. And there were people arguing. The people who live close to the road wanted dust suppression. The people further away from the road did not want dust suppression. People who lived at the one end of the road wanted the road cul-de-sac out the other end of the road, and vice versa. And after sitting with the roadmaster for an hour, one of the residents turned to us and said, "Now I understand why nothing's been done." Because
Is that the reason somebody is not wanting to this?
well, there's lots of different approaches to doing things, and not everyone is going to be happy with those approaches.
Right, it is a road that I keep seeing on the list of things to do, but there's other things that have been ahead of it, maybe because they were easier
Well,
or
and we
cheaper already budgeted,
well,
but
and we have a situation with the Buttonwood Bridge, which is a $3 million project. And that is, we understand the dust issue and it's a problem, but the Buttonwood Bridge is a very important health and safety problem. I mean, the bridge did collapse, or portions of the bridge did collapse several years ago. It needs to be addressed as soon as possible, and the township is working on that. But that's a $3 million nut that the township has to figure out how to do. And the township has obtained grant money to defer a significant portion of that, but it's still going to be a significant expense to the township.
So the expense is really the reason that this is not moving.
It's one of the reasons, yes.
It's been 12 years that township did provide a survey plan, an engineering plan.
And I'm
doing the asphalt, and it's because I saw that print. And since then, nothing has happened. Thanks, I guess that's what
don't know that.
you have to live with the dirt road for good. That's. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else have comments?
Okay, Bernie.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
20.
Good night, all.
Good night, Bernie.